Stay there. But we got a seat for you. Yes, sir.
Good morning. Well, thank you guys for coming out. We at Fallbrook Church, on behalf of Pastor Mike and the congregation and the Community Awareness Ministry, we want to thank you for coming this morning to get the information that we want to thank Representative Turner and Senator Whitmire for taking time out to come talk to us about a lot of issues that are going on with the state and how it's going to affect you. It's just a slew of things that have been happening that we need to hear directly from the ones who serve us in the capacity of good stewardship and making sure that your rights are protected and that you have opportunity, your kids have opportunity to grow and get better in life. So we thank them from that. But first and foremost, we want to thank God for this opportunity. And Pastor Mike does a wonderful job of giving us the facilities and the time for the volunteers of camp for taking time out to come this morning and just set this up for you. We just want to be thankful for that. So if you don't mind, let us pray. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this wonderful morning. We thank you for this glorious opportunity to learn about what's going on, Father, to be aware. You said that we are to be knowledgeable and not ignorant to things that are around us, Father, so that we can be good stewards, Father, and help others to be good stewards in life, Father, to live and navigate the way that you called us to do it, Father. So we thank you for the presenters. Thank you for the guests and the ones that are on the way. We thank you for our pastor, Pastor Mike, for giving us this opportunity to do this in his house, Father. In the mighty name of Jesus, we pray. Amen. Amen.
I'm going to start with some introductions. First, to my right, I have Representative Sylvester Turner, who was raised in Acres Home and attended the University of Houston and Harvard Law School. He has served as seminar lecturer for the University of Houston Law School and South Texas College of Law, and as an adjunct professor for the Thurgood Marshall School of Law. Representative Turner was elected to the House of Representatives in 1988 and has since earned the respect of his colleagues from every corner of the state and the political spectrum. Please welcome Representative Sylvester Turner. To my left, I have Senator John Whitmire, who represents the 15th Senatorial District, comprised of North Houston and parts of Harris County. He was elected to the Texas Senate in 1982 after serving 10 years in the Texas House of Representatives. With over 30 years of service in the Texas Senate, Senator Whitmire ranks first in seniority and is the Dean of the Texas Senate. Please welcome Senator John Whitmire. I would also like to let you all know that we have a special guest here with us. It's Wells Fargo Banking, and they're here to present some of their new banking options. They can be found in the lobby if you exit to the back on your left. I have a series of questions that I'm going to ask to both of you gentlemen, and either one of you please feel free to answer. The first one has to do with the voter ID law. The current Texas law requires voters to present one of 7 forms of state or federal identification or an election identification certificate. Proponents of the law say it is designed to prevent voter fraud, while opponents believe the law will make it harder for minorities to vote. The Department of Justice believes the law violates the Voting Rights Act as well as portions of the United States Constitution. What thoughts do you have about this issue, and how successful do you feel the federal government will be in either overturning or amending this law?
Let me just say, we dealt with the voter ID law, session after session. Passed it in 2011, and then it was challenged by a number of groups, including Hispanics, Mexican American Legislative Caucus, the Texas Legislative Black Caucus, which I chair, many of the NAACP, many other groups. And quite frankly, that it held it up. So in the 2012 elections, we didn't have to deal with it because we were battling it in court. And then the DC court ruled that it was had a discriminatory intent, and so that held it up while it went up to the United States Supreme Court. And then, as you know, in the last historic Supreme Court decision, they determined that Section 4, large portion of Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act is unconstitutional. But things that have to be pre-cleared because the Justice Department had denied pre-clearance of the voter ID law. And the Supreme Court basically said that portion of Section 4 was no longer constitutional. So it kind of brought everything back to square one. And just as soon as the Supreme Court made that ruling, the Attorney General, Greg Abbott of the state of Texas, immediately announced that voter ID was front and center again. So in this coming city election, for example, in November, the voter ID law will be in effect, unless something happens between now and then, but will be in effect. And I know Eric Holder, the Attorney General for the United States, has filed a lawsuit against the state of Texas on basically some very general grounds under the voter, under Section, I want to say Section 2, Section 3 of the Voter Rights Act. But for right now, the voter ID law is in effect, will take effect in November. And so hopefully many seniors and others who don't have photo ID, by using one of those 7 methods that you talked about, need to take advantage of it. We do it now, because it will take, you can avoid it if people vote by mail. So if you vote by mail, you don't have to worry about it. But if you vote in person, early on election day, voter ID, photo ID, with correct addresses and names on your driver's license, for example, all of that should will be in action in November.
Representative Turner certainly gives a good overview. I would like to emphasize a couple of elements. First of all, after having been in office as introduction to elected for 40 years, I've seen all types of legislation. This particular legislation I would characterize as some of the most mean-spirited legislation that I've ever seen. They cannot, and they being the Republican majority that controls the House and the Senate, we're there, our presence is known, we speak up and make a difference. But at the end of the day, they do have a large majority. They actually, in the Senate, where we have rules that require them to have a 2/3 of the 31 senators, 21 senators have to approve someone for debate. That's to make us come together and talk. They actually changed those rules when we considered voter ID. There's a provision with majority voting senators, you can do away with that rule. That's the route they went. In the presentation and the debate, they could not document one instance of voter fraud. Voter fraud is not a prevalent problem in the state of Texas. In my judgment, when you listen to their rhetoric and listen to them talk, it is a subtle way, and not real subtle, to get after undocumented immigrants. They would like to go after a largely Hispanic, undocumented population that they would allege is voting. Now, I know undocumented immigrants. They don't want to go in a voting booth. They don't even access other services because they are having to live underground. They are fearful of authorities. So they don't go into a ballot box where you would sign in and be reviewed. So it's not going to get after that population because they're not voting. But who does it really harm? It harms your and my largely senior citizens. When you go throughout our community, I don't doubt that one of us here this morning is going to have some documentation when you vote. But when you have an 80-year-old person like my mother, before she passed, I took her to vote. She never had a requirement to have a voter ID in the categories that they listed. So when I take her to vote, or the neighbor takes my 86-year-old mother to vote, when they get there, first of all, physically, time-wise, it's hard to go vote for a senior. When they're taken to the ballot box now, and they do not have something that they've voted for 60 years without, they're not going to be able to vote. They'll go home. It has been documented in other states where they implemented this. There's the first couple of election cycles, there's a 3 to 4% drop-off in voting participation, largely Democratic, largely minority community voters. So there's no doubt in my mind, if you listen to their rhetoric, they're proponents of voter ID, know what they're doing, don't care, and are trying to suppress a Democratic, largely senior, oftentimes minority community participation That's why it does violate, in my judgment, and in the Attorney General's office, the opportunity under the terms of the Constitution. So what we need to do, it is current law, it's going to be required, but we've got to use voter education. We can't let the other side keep us from voting, the most precious right that's guaranteed. So I don't like it. We've fought long and hard, but it also will give me an opportunity to say this morning, elections matter. And we need to be concerned about who we send to Austin and to Washington, that they will speak out forcefully against these kind of provisions, because it's very discriminatory. It hurts senior citizens and folks, the working class and the retired. So we're watching. I hope the federal courts will take measures to block it. But as Sylvester says, it is the current law. So we got to make sure our seniors, new voters, let me show you how tricky they were. They know what they're doing. Look at what the voter ID items can consist of. Concealed weapon permit. They allowed the good old boys around the state who happen to want to carry a weapon. That's one of the IDs you can use. Conversely, student IDs are not allowed. The students in Prairie View, the students at U of H, UT, at our campuses, that's a very valid ID with a photo to show you are. No, they didn't want to use that. So I could spend a huge session to show elections matter, the mean-spirited people that are running many areas of our national and state government need to be blocked, and it's good that we're talking about it this morning.
So speaking of voting and getting people out to the polls and discriminatory practices, I do have a question about redistricting. So for each redistricting cycle over the past 40 years, Texas has found itself in federal court addressing concerns about its redistricting plans. Not once has the state won its case. And yet here we are again being asked by the federal government to defend the accusation that the state is intentionally drawing boundary lines for both congressional and legislative districts that discriminate against Blacks and Hispanics. So if you could, please explain why it appears that the state of Texas has a difficult time complying, so they say, with the Voting Rights Act redistricting provision, and what you think can be done to alleviate this issue once and for all.
Well, let me just piggyback, because all of these issues are connected. You can't separate voter ID, the law of voter ID, from the redistricting process. They're all connected. And I think if you recognize that the end result is trying to determine what the outcome of the election will be. So all of these laws are used to try to either suppress the vote or to determine what the ultimate outcome will be. On redistricting, same thing, for example, with voter ID, because we kind of pretty much dealt with them both at the same time in the Texas legislature. That was litigated as well in San Antonio as well as in DC. And the court in DC, the same court that decided that the voter ID law was discriminatory in nature, the same DC court decided that Texas redistricting plan was also discriminatory in nature and ruled it unconstitutional, okay? And then the San Antonio court kind of redrew some maps, some interim maps that Senator Whitmire and I and others have been running on since, what, 2011 on that end. Again, the Supreme Court looked at the redistricting map, okay? And in this last decision, and the Supreme Court again said to the United States Attorney General, who did not pre-clear Texas redistricting plan, the United States Supreme Court said no, okay? By ruling, let me explain, by ruling that part of Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act unconstitutional, basically what the Supreme Court was saying is that in the Voting Rights Act, you have to look at whether or not states, especially those in the South, and Texas is one of them, Southwest, have engaged in historical practices of discrimination. And Congress, several years ago, had extensive testimony on what's happening in these states whether or not they are continuing to discriminate against Hispanics and African Americans or not. And they compiled about 17,000 pages of testimony to indicate that discriminatory acts and practices are taking place. But the United States Supreme Court said, when we take a look at the country, we see more African Americans that are holding elected positions now than ever before. There are more Hispanics that are holding elected positions now than ever before. And all that Congress did was go back and look at what took place in the 1950s, what took place in the 1960s, what took place in the 1970s. That was yesterday. This is the new America. And even though they didn't specifically say it, I believe what the Supreme Court was saying is that, look, this country now has a president that is African American. Okay? So you can't come here, in a sense, and say that African Americans and Hispanics are being discriminatory when the President of the United States is African American, when the Sylvester Turners of the world are in the legislature, and da-da-da-da-da-da. And so essentially they threw that out, that old formula out, and they said to Congress, go back and look at what's taking place now, and recalculate the formula on how these states should be viewed, on what the pre-clearance mechanism should be. So don't talk about what took place in the past. Take a look at what's taking place right now. Now, and what Justice Ginsburg came back, who dissented from that opinion, she came back in her opinion, and she said, to say that things have changed so much that we need to go in another direction is pretty much foolish, okay? Because her view was, the reason why you have a President Obama and the reason why you have a state representative Sylvester Turner is in large part because of the Voting Rights Act. And so if you remove it, then the country will go back to the way it used to be. And her analogy is, you know, if you hold up an umbrella and it's raining and you're dry, you can't say because the person is dry, because the umbrella is over his head, that all is well. Remove the umbrella and see whether or not he gets wet, okay? And as a result of that opinion, when the Supreme Court said threw that out, then the redistricting, Texas redistricting plan is now back in limbo. And so the San Antonio court is now, and others are having to take a second look to see whether or not, in view of what the Supreme Court said, whether or not we can move forward. The reality is that what the Supreme Court did was massive. By removing the pre-clearance mechanism, okay, you got cities like Pasadena that are moving forward, going to like at-large elections, okay? Galveston, for example, is eliminating some of this justice of the peace and constables, two of whom I think African Americans down there, because they're changing their systems. You have North Carolina is just gone crazy. North Carolina and Texas are like sisters and brothers. They're just gone crazy because the pre-clearance mechanism has been eliminated. And Congress now has to move forward to renew it, to reestablish the formula under the Voting Rights Act. And the way Congress is operating these days, who knows when that's going to take place. So we're back in the same, in many ways, in the same fighting mode that existed in the 60s in large part. Okay, that's the reality. And that's what people have to understand. As much as things have changed, things can revert to where they used to be if people are not more vigilant, and people cannot assume that just where they are today, all is well, okay? Because there are intentional movements that are taking place to change that. Last, I'll say this to turn over to John. Our new Texas Senator, Ted Cruz, made a statement the other day, which I just found incredible. And he was talking about Jesse Helms, former United States Senator Jesse Helms. Jesse Helms, who was an unapologetic segregationist, Same Jesse Helms when Caramels LeBron, the first female United States Senator, was on the elevator. He got in the elevator, turned towards her, and started singing Dixie in her face. The same one who didn't vote to extend the Voting Rights Act in 1982. The same one who was supportive of the apartheid regime in South Africa. I mean, just an unapologetic racist segregation. Our United States Senator was given a speech the other day, and he said, we need 100 more like Jesse Helms. Now, that's Texas United States Senator. That's our United States Senator. But the response has been moody, kind of quiet, okay? And what I am saying is that if we are not careful, then that mood is going to slip right back in, and before you know it, we are going to be refighting battles that people thought we had won, but they're right now before us again. Redistricting happens to be one.
Absolutely, Sylvester nailed the issue. I'll amplify it by saying prejudice and ignorance still exist. So let's just start with that understanding. We see it on the House floor. I see it in the halls of the Senate. Whether it's voter ID, where it makes it difficult for minority communities to vote by requiring an 86-year-old senior citizen to have a document that she probably doesn't have, doesn't have a driver's license. So that manifests itself there. Then it moves into redistricting. They want to change the rules of how we draw the lines. They don't want the federal Justice Department to have to pre-clear. Now, what does that mean, put a face on it? First of all, it means when I got elected in 72 from single member districts, that was a part of the Voting Rights Act and the Equal Opportunity. When I ran in 72 for the very first time, instead of running across Harris County, where you largely had to be white, or certainly belong to a large organization like Labor or other voting blocks, they drew the districts into single member districts. What happened that year? It not only allowed Sophronia Thompson to run from Northeast Houston, Mickey Leland from 5th Ward, Benny Rance from East Houston, it actually allowed a young white guy in Oak Forest to get elected, which meant you had one man, one vote. Your vote meant something in single member districts, which allowed for the diversity of the legislature as we currently understand it. But that will be the next thing that will be challenged. Sylvester and I were at the Spring Branch School Board yesterday, talking to them about a legislative review. The shocking thing about the Spring Branch School Board, in a diverse Spring Branch minority school district, largely Hispanic, but significant African American, everyone in that meeting was white. And I raised an objection. Sylvester and I made the point. Why? Because they run at large. Right. The people in Memorial, south of I-10, control the elections. If we had the kind of representation and the equality that we deserve and we need to fight for, that district would be broken into single member districts where you would have diversity. But they're fighting that. So redistricting is another manifestation of how you divide who's going to represent the people. If you don't have to have a federal Justice Department clearance that it is fair to all ethnicities, they would go back to where it would be mostly a good old boy white government organization, where they're trying to move in Pasadena as we talk. Spring Branch still practices. So what do? We have public forums like this. Elections matter. We speak up. Mr. Cruz does not represent the majority of the Texas views because Texans are, for the most part, certainly in our urban areas, are diverse and want equality. So we need to work with our young people. I'm looking at a very experienced audience this morning, a mature audience this morning. We got to let our young folks know that many of the freedoms, privileges, and opportunities that they enjoy are actually under attack. Vote, register, vote, and become involved. So Voter ID we brought up this morning, redistricting brought up, and it's just, those are examples of where the power structure are trying to go backwards instead of forwards, because we've come a long ways in our lives, but we all know there's a long ways to go. We could talk the rest of the morning about, now we do have diversity in our elected positions, but we don't have diversity in our economic opportunity. You know, I can look just at the city of Houston city council makeup. We got people of color there. But look and see who the city of Houston gives their contracts to. Mostly it's white engineering companies. White law firms do the bond work. So we need to not only protect what we got, but we need an aggressive agenda about going forward and giving everyone a place at the table.
That's true. I think we'd all agree that we do have a long way to go. We're going to switch gears just a little bit, and I want to ask about the stand your ground laws across the country. I think in recent months that has been called into question, most notably in Florida. And what they're saying is that these laws provide disproportionate advantages for some and disadvantages for others. My question for the two of you, and I'll start with you, Senator Whitmire, with this one is, can you explain if there is a stand your ground type law here in the state of Texas, and whether or not you all feel that it is working as it is intended?
We don't have a standalone like the Florida model. What the penal code in Texas says, as long as you can flee, in other words, unless you're in imminent danger, you do not have the right to shoot someone. If you can allow that person to flee, you're to hold your fire. And for certain, if you have the opportunity to flee, you know, we could analyze the Florida tragedy. There were many opportunities for that not to occur. Gentleman not acting like a cop in the first place, the gentleman not getting out of his car, allowing either parties to flee. So we do not have a stand your ground per se. In Texas, though, we do have a castle doctrine, which passed a couple of years ago, and it's actually under review. It says essentially if you're in your home, you do not necessarily have to feel threatened. It's just if someone is in your yard, tampering with your property, attempting to get in, that person does not have to be given the opportunity to flee. Basis, it had broad support in the legislature that your home kind of is your right to be safe, if of all places, with your family. So that is being, I know Senator West and others, and Sylvester and I will continue to review how it's implemented, how it's carried out. No one should be unnecessarily harmed if they're walking through your yard. But that doctrine does pretty much say, if you're in my yard, in my garage, I have the right to defend my family, my home. I would not anticipate the Florida model getting any, I shouldn't say no support. There are elements in the legislature. But I think we have passed on that for good reasons, and I would say that is overreaching, that in general, individuals, either party should be an opportunity to change directions.
Okay. And just for clarity, does that also apply to your neighbors?
No, I think it's pretty clearly, it's your castle, you can protect your castle. You know, we had a tragedy in Pasadena where a guy unloaded. That guy probably should have been prosecuted if I was in charge. I mean, there again, our law says if the person if you have the opportunity to let the person flee, we don't encourage shootings in our penal code. I guess you could say the council doctrine is the interpretation of protecting your home and family. But the Pasadena tragedy, those young men breaking into someone's home next door, bad, but nobody's life was under threat at that time, for certainly the guy. And he actually, I believe, refresh my memory, he kind of told 911, the dispatcher, watch what I do. I mean, he was a vigilante. And that's something we need to guard against, and we probably need to review under law. I've got real concerns about people with not proper training, not good psychological examinations, such as the shooter in Florida, as we're now seeing post that tragedy. He's just not a balanced person. Why would he be given the the authority to be a neighborhood officer to protect anyone's neighborhood, because he would never pass, in my judgment, a background check or a psychological exam. So that's something the legislature and homeowner association need to be mindful of. You know, you need, if you're going to be carrying a gun and patrolling on behalf of your neighborhood, we need to make certain that you yourself are a sound mind and good judgment. And obviously, he lost out on all those grounds in Florida, and it was a real tragedy.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much I can add to that. Let me just say, Senator Whitmire is chair for criminal jurisprudence in the Senate and is the leading expert when it comes to criminal justice matters, both on adults and juveniles in the Texas Senate. I agree with what John had to say. Stand your ground is just it's an open-ended sort of policy, okay? Because it leaves it up to someone's interpretation, and it can be used in so many different areas. And then it's been applied in such an arbitrary fashion. That was the lady, I think in Florida, whose husband was coming at her, and she went, I think, to her car garage and got a gun, and then shot him. Oh, no, she didn't shoot him. She shot up in the air. She shot up in the air, and I think she ended up getting 20 years. Okay, and she applied the stand your ground sort of principle. Got 20 years for that. So you got her case, and then you got the gentleman case. So, you know, I think it's just breeds too much discretion into the system, and it's arbitrary enforcement, and it depends on who's standing your ground against whom. So, you know, it's just messed up. The council doctrine in the state of Texas basically says, you know, this is my home. You come into my home, you come into my space, then you come at your own risk. Okay. And in some cases where people say, you know, if you come into my space, or if you've been in my space and you attempt to leave my space, but I get you before you leave my space, or you walk right and you get to the sidewalk, I'm gonna drag you back over my space, and I'm still casting out. So, I mean, the reality is that with respect to Texas, if you're not breaking into someone's home, okay, then you're gonna be fine. You break into someone's home, you attempt to break into someone's home, you do it at your own. You take your risk, okay? Two different sort of principles, and I agree with John, that if it's somebody next door, if it's somebody else's property, you don't have the right to go and try to protect everybody else's property. You do have the right to protect your own home, and I view those as two different things.
Thank you. And one last question before we open it up to questions from the audience. There was recently a stabbing at one of our area high schools that resulted in the death of a student. Police are now saying that the stabbing is gang-related. And so can you tell us, I guess, what legislative measures are currently in place to curb gang violence, to deal with that, maybe on a proactive measure, and if there's anything that we could have done as a community to prevent this incident?
You want to take the gangs?
Yeah,
Well, I've seen, yeah.
I've observed that,
I've gone
certainly it's
from
not unique
setting
to the
one
Springs
to setting
school
9-1,
district, enforcing gangs
and
throughout
they have
our
stayed on during that time.
state and certainly Harris County. I wish I knew the answer, and maybe as elected officials we can have input from
I've
parents.
seen that up on the left side there.
School districts first have to be aware and acknowledge, I mean, even all of us here,
Right
first
now,
you got to
I'm
acknowledge
going
it.
blind,
Okay,
which is-
so if you don't talk about it,
Down front.
you want to address it. So they do exist, unfortunately quite often it's ethnicity that divides the gangs. So I guess we have to be proactive as leaders, certainly school administrators and community leaders, to try to
Yeah.
probably
I wanted you to be aware of it.
identify some leaders and put a stop
So
and
you
clamp
can
down on
change it real
them.
quick before.
Don't let them infiltrate the general school population. You know, I'm very concerned about school discipline. I don't think police officers ought to be going through, our school police departments ought to be going through the classrooms or the halls, writing tickets for, you know, loud noise or throwing an eraser, things that would be called school discipline. But I strongly would support school police departments enforcing zero tolerance on in gangs. Gang identity, clothing caps ought to be zero tolerance. Does this solve the root cause of it? Probably not, but at least it puts a control factor at the school campus. But I think we as a society are just going to have to see what develops gangs. What are they looking for? And I would suggest this, and it's very complicated, and I'll yield to the experts
They're
in
up full.
education.
2 and 16 are up full.
But it's going to be suspension
And I have
from school.
checked on the baptistry.
You know what feeds the gang activity?
Key down below.
Young people in school that
That's
can't
number
make their
6.
grades,
Now,
that
it
might
changes
have
to
emotional,
recess
mental
level.
health problems, social economic problems, family, alcohol, drug problems. So they get behind in their studies, and then we suspend them from school. Where do they go? It's a feeder to the gangs. So one, our objective ought to be keeping people in school at all costs. Get the state to give the resources to, not out of school suspensions. If you want to misbehave and you're showing behavioral patterns that do not conform to his classrooms, don't send them to an alternative school. Don't suspend them to their home. Keep them down the hall in the study hall where I used to be sent. Don't give up on our kids, because that's the feeding stock for the gangs. Find out who the gang leadership is. Zero tolerance. Don't allow them near the school. Don't allow our students to dress the paraphernalia of a gang. So be proactive, and then for sure, early intervention. Early intervention. You pay now or you pay later. But there are a lot of things that are best practices, and some school districts are doing a good job, some don't. But at the end of the day, it's hard to legislate morals and values and parenting.
I didn't notice that.
And so, need to invite everybody to church.
Sorry about that.
And really, it does start at home. But I don't want to say it starts at home and think that's passing the buck. We need to be involved in the home under the right circumstances. Children Protective Services, way historically underfunded, understaffed. That's the group that when you see a family abusing the child, get involved early from a state center. Mental health services. You can't imagine how many of our social, school, criminal justice issues go right back to someone has an emotional, either the parents or the child, the family. So we got to talk to our colleagues. See, Sylvester and I don't mind spending money where it matters. We got some Republican colleagues, they don't want to spend money on the crops. You know why? In their neighborhood, they got their insurance policies. You know, they are already enjoying the benefits of their work, their opportunity, their good schools, and they're trying to keep a lot of folks down. So spend money where it matters, either pay now. I would much rather spend more and more money on public schools, mental health services, than have to think about building the next criminal justice facility. You know, that is a total, every time, in fact, the good news is we're closing them in the state because we've actually introduced a new program. But every time you build another correctional facility for the juveniles or the adults, it means we have failed as a society and as a legislature. So it's good that we talk about this, but if I had the quick fix to the gang activity, I wish I did. But it's a multifaceted situation.
And let me just, the incident with the school, and that is a tough one. I guess in the immediate sense, everything now is sort of social media driven. I think we're getting to the point now, even in our schools, is that we're going to have to find a way for either people at our schools or the principals, teachers, and somehow the district to kind of tap into the communication that's taking place amongst our kids. Okay, I think we're going to have to monitor more what's being tweeted out there, because kids are right there on the front line in many ways they know what's taking place before anybody else knows what's taking place. And nowadays they're tweeting to their friends, it's going down here, it's happening over here. And so I think we are going to have to take a much more aggressive role in listening to what they are saying to one another. And so the tweeting, the Facebook, I think we're going to have to take a look at what they're saying to one another. I think not only administrators, but parents are going to have to do the same thing. Because right now, there's the environment in which we're in, which our kids are living, to me, it's a very toxic one right now. It's just toxic. And which is going to call for us being a little bit more aggressive than we would like to be. It's going to require, I think, in many ways, where in the past, we may have enabled kids or allowed kids, for example, to congregate in cafeterias and stuff, kind of on their own and communicate. I think we're going to have to step in more. I think adults are going to have to be present more. And you don't necessarily want to treat, high school kids like they're kids, but when you engage in crazy behavior, then until you can get it corrected, then it's going to require more things. So I would hate to see 200 or 300 students, for example, in a cafeteria, and there not be adult supervision. And you got to stand, I hate to say it, but I think we're going to have to provide the resources to stand, to be present, okay? I think we have to. I know, John, you had talked about carrying a bill to provide additional monies for security for students, for schools. So I think we have to become a lot more engaged in what's taking place on our campuses. There was a time when you think you send your kids to school, that's the safest place for them, even if the home environment was somewhat toxic. Well, right now it's just being carried forth there. So I think we have to be a lot more engaged, and I think they are going to have to see, whether they're in pre-K, elementary, junior high, or high school, that the adults here are in charge. Whether you like it or not, we are in charge, okay? And so that's on one end. On the other end is, this past week or two, or the last 2 or 3 weeks, you watch television, there's been so much criminal violence behavior. And let me just say, in large part, it's seen by African Americans, and it's crazy. It's just crazy. I was watching television, I said, we're losing our minds. I mean, we're just losing our minds. We talk about stand your ground and all of that. Well, take the government out, and now we're dealing with ourselves. Where you go in Denny's and you're acting crazy, doing crazy stuff. We can no longer provide excuses. We cannot provide excuses for people's behavior. You may love him, you may love her, but we cannot give them a justification for doing it. I'm not going to allow you to say because you are poor, you have to do this. We all been there. Done that, been there, overcome that, been there. We're not going to do that. Parents cannot excuse the behavior for their children, for what's taking place in school, or what's taking place in their home, or what's taking place in the street. The excuses got to go. System is bad, I know. The system was bad in the 1800s. The system is bad now. The system will be bad in 100 years from now. We're still improving on it, but it can no longer be an excuse. And so we got to take the excuses out of it. I just believe is that if I start allowing if you allow our kids to dress in such a way that is respectful and demeaning, it will gravitate, it will enhance over time. And so a whole lot of this, pulling the wearing the pants down to your butt, I can't take it, can't deal with it. I think it's crazy, we've gone too far. But the reality is, it is a complicated situation. And many of our kids have lost, they can't see themselves beyond where they are. They don't see a world beyond where they are. okay? And I think that's where those of us who can, where the church has to become more involved. A few of us were talking a couple of weeks ago about saying you can't change the world overnight. You can't do everything, but all of us can do something. Where we take, some of us, go to some of our schools and say, ask the principal, okay, give me 20 kids that in a sense have never been beyond their neighborhood, never gone beyond. I don't care how bad they may be, whatever, just give me 20. And a few of us are going to take these 20 and we're going out to dinner, we're going with them, and just sit there and kind of listen to what they're saying, listen to their conversation, and try to show them a world that's beyond where they are. And so we've got to become engaged. Family has to become engaged, but where there's no mom and dad, the church has to become more engaged. And the community and leaders have to become more engaged. Well, we have to take ownership. And then lastly, what I will say is that we have to reclaim what's ours. And I say that when I grew up, if my mom and dad were not available, if they were not there, the neighbor had permission to stop us in our tracks, okay? And if that neighbor, it was the person across the street, or it was the person 2 streets over, but they had permission to stop us in our street, in our tracks. And as kids, we fear the adults more than the adults fear the kids. We have to rechange this set of dynamics in which kids must understand that they are kids, and adults must understand they are adults. And the two cannot get themselves mixed up, otherwise we're in a sad state of affairs. And then lastly, if it's broke, you must fix it. And what I mean by that, one thing I learned about the park over on Victory, and my chief of staff was here to tell you, there was a time you can go to parks and people are tatted. Adults, kids, any park, they just tad. And we used to just look past it. But my attitude is that you have to reprogram people's behavior. And so when a few tad up, you gotta quickly repair. A few tad up, you gotta quickly repair. A few tad up, you gotta quickly repair. Does it cost? Yes, it does. But what it also says, I'm not gonna let you win. I'm not gonna let you tear it down where it's no good for anybody else. And so if you break it, I have to fix it, and I will fix it. And so it's a battle of the will. And then you hope that other people will recognize what's taking place and they will join in. And so when they see people throwing stuff down on the ground, they themselves will pick it up. If they see people tearing stuff up, they'll take ownership and they'll say no. Parents, adults, the church, community leaders must take ownership of our kids. We have to take ownership of our kids. And if we believe in a God that we serve, then we have to act with boldness and confidence that we can regain what we are losing. And what now is that we are living in a mindset where it's toxic. Everybody believes it's just the way it is, and we just existed. But no more excuses. African Americans cannot make excuses. You cannot, we just cannot say to our kids, it's all right. Okay? And you can't be going to the schoolhouse defending Johnny or Mary when you know Johnny and Mary were the hellion before they got there. You just cannot. And so when that takes place, I think we can make some progress. But until then, we're going to have to be present, we're going to have to provide proper supervision, and we're going to have to take control. That's a long answer.
Any questions from the audience?
Well, before we interject, thank you, gentlemen, thank you, team. There are a couple of questions that are piggybacking on, but Representative Turner, I know before we get to the questions and let your questions skew it, and you guys think on one thing, is that yes, that there is some movement, but oftentimes, a lot, especially in the community, they don't know how. So when we come back to you about that, think about grassroots accountability models. Is there something that you guys have seen that work? And number two is people always looking from some award for their participation in doing things in the future. And that's just about the nature of people. And so, has there been a model that says, hey, you know, if you're parentally involved in the school, will we take a 0.5% off of the property taxes for the year? Have you seen anything like that to encourage people beyond thinking about their children's future, but thinking about their monetary now, the presence of now, to get involved? Because there's certain ones of us that like to be involved because we want to be involved, but there's certainly people out there that will be involved if they have some kind of reward for it. So have you seen those things? And before we get to that, Affordable Care Act, I know you invited out the city, I know the representative was there, but it's coming up October the 1st, isn't it, Representative?
The enrollment will start October the 1st.
October the 1st. And will she be able to take some questions?
Yes, she will. Well, where did she go? She was sitting right there. Maybe she went. She'll be back. I'm sure she'll be. But yeah, the enrollment period will start October the 1st. And certainly if people don't have any insurance, the Affordable Care Act, with people some kind of refer to the Obamacare, is a place to go. But even if you're working, if your income level is, for example, is under, let's say, $92,000 or less for a family of 4, you can get a credit on your reduction on the cost of your insurance, as well as a reduction on your insurance premium. Okay. If your income is about $92,000 or less. And it's a single application that you fill out. For those who, let's say, would qualify for Medicaid, they would automatically be referred to the Medicaid system. For those who qualify for CHIP, the Children's Health Insurance Program, and there are many teachers who are on CHIP, for example. They will be sent over to the Children's Health Insurance Program. And then for those who qualify for Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, then they will be sent into that system. And then it will have all of the insurance plans available for people to take a look at. This system works when when a lot of people participate. Okay? Let me tell you one of the reasons why Republicans are fighting against it so hard is because they recognize that if they can discourage people from taking advantage of the Affordable Care Act, it works against it. Okay? It benefits everybody. It works in the most cost-effective way when people participate in the system. Because it's based on a lot of people participating, you kind of share the cost comes down. And that's why they're fighting. Now, the governor of the state of Texas, in his infinite crazy wisdom, decided not for Texas not, in a sense, to participate through his own plan. Because if we had invested about $50 million over the next 2 years, the state of Texas would have drawn down $4 billion, okay, for health care. $4 billion for just $50 million. He said no, but that's not stopping it. The feds are setting up the exchanges. Is it Maria? Maria's not here. Maria, why don't you come to them and just tell them a little bit about it.
Thank you, Representative Turner and Senator Whitmire. And thank you all for having me here. I'm Maria Dela Cruz. I'm with the City of Houston Department of Health and Human Services. And yes, we are working right now to organize the efforts to get as many people insured as possible. And exactly right, the more people insured, the more it costs less. Right now, it's really hard. There's 75% of Harris County that are uninsured or underinsured. And we are working together with nonprofits, grassroots organizations, schools, hospitals, to get as many people trained to help people enroll in the marketplace. And that's basically it.
How would they get enrolled?
So how do you get enrolled? So I have information in the back. And there's also a thing here if you want to fill it out in the back outside where the pamphlets are. This will give you information, we'll get your information, I'm sorry, and we'll update our system and send you emails on what's happening. But really what you need to do is go to getcoveredamerica.org. Again, it's getcoveredamerica.org. There'll be a calendar of events, whether it's their enrollment activities or trainings or just education on what's happening with the Affordable Care Act. So again, getcoveredamerica.org will have a calendar. It also has one call center where all these organizations, Gateway to Care, Change Happens, hospitals are coming together to have enough information for everyone to have access to this Affordable Care Act. Getcoveredamerica.org.
And the enrollment starts October 1st. And especially if you don't have any insurance, you certainly want to take advantage of it. But if you have insurance and you think it's high, okay, you just think it's too high, then compare what you get under this one, okay? Because if your kid is 26 years under 26 or younger, your kid can stay on your own insurance under the Affordable Care Act, okay? If you got a pre-existing illness, and there are a lot of people who can't get insurance because they got a pre-existing illness, you can get it under here, under the Affordable Care Act, okay? And if you got some sort of chronic problem that would have bankrupt many families, you don't have to worry about it under the system of the Affordable Care Act. And like some of my employees at my law firm, they tell me, Mr. Turner, this insurance that you've given us is just too high. Okay, well fine, go to the Affordable Care Act and save you some money. You know, but the point is, take advantage of it. And don't listen to all the negativity out there and encourage people to at least get the information. Okay, thanks, Mayor. Thank you very much. All right, back to you.
Thank you for that information. Now, in general, how we do it at Fallbrook is that we try to do it decent in order. So if you had a question, if you think of one, then just fill it out, and some of the representatives from Community Awareness are here to take your questions, and we'll start reading the questions to you.
Okay.
But
incentive program? You want to address the incentive program? I can't think of one. I don't know the model, and I'll reflect and look. In terms of reducing property taxes, school property taxes, I would urge, our schools are underfunded now. Many of the problems that we're facing with, what is it? Class sizes, you don't want to increase your class sizes. So I would be thinking, but Lord, I think what the message ought to be, protect your children, protect your home, and get involved because you need to be involved. So I understand the concept of incentivizing folks, but when it comes to your kids' safety and education, that in itself ought to be the incentive.
Well, in all due respect, just to be the advocate on this part, on the other side, is that those things that you're talking about, the safety of your children's education, and a lot of that time, if you look back over the perspective of history, a lot of those questions about them being and having so many tools in school was that the parents were so involved with their education that they were able to bridge the kids to a point where you didn't need, because you didn't have all those tutors and all this access to the internet and still making C's, those things are, and then you wouldn't need so many metal detectors if I'm involved, if I'm at school, if I'm working with them. So the dollars to apply to masking the problem as opposed to getting people to really deal with the issue. That's what I'm talking about. Like, how do we have, and what is the accountability?
We spread the message, and obviously we want all parents to be involved. But on the other hand, I can give some real concrete examples. Single mom holding down 2 jobs, it's just going to be hard for her to be at school. So you got to also be realistic about where we are in America. I mean, we've had some very difficult economic times. I will also quickly add, unfortunately, we've locked up unnecessarily a lot of the men in our society. A lot of fathers are not going to schools because we've got them incarcerated. So we just need to keep going step by step to address the problems, but it's not probably ever going to be like when you and I were growing up, and that's the sad news. But it's also the real news, and so we got to be prepared for it and be proactive in terms of if there's not parental involvement, we're going to have to step in and provide some of those services.
And just like you have businesses that are adopting schools. I mean, we're going to look at ways of how we can adopt some of these schools as well. So maybe we need churches partnering with schools. Okay, maybe we need that, because a lot of the folk, for example, that are coming to the church are they're in a better state than sometimes the parents who do not come to church, but they're sending their kids to school. And so there have to be, I think, several safety nets that we are wrapping around our children. But if one fails, then another one hopefully will catch that kid.
And I'll even get a little controversial. Charter schools are great at providing a real service. Some private schools provide great services, but because your child is in a successful charter or a private school, you've still got to take an interest in the public schools.
Absolutely.
Because we're very transient, we have a very mobile society, and just because you happen to be fortunate to have your child in a good setup, we can't lose sense of this. Your next door neighbor, your neighbor's child may not be in that same predicament. So I'll simply say is, because I'm beginning to see, and it concerns me, the success of charter schools, which I understand we have one here. And let me tell you what, the other day I was running to pick up some cleanings, and the Heights cleaners that I use had closed the Heights office, and they'd taken my clothes over to Westheimer and Westlake near the Galleria, so I needed some white shirts. So to get out of traffic at 7:30 in the morning, I was running over there because they'd shut the Heights office, so they'd transfer me over there. I could not get to the cleaners for the River Oaks Baptist mamas dropping off their kids. And I thought to myself, great that they want to do that, but isn't it a shame that they're not over at Lamar High School participating in the HISD experience? So my message is, if you have a great Second Baptist or First Baptist experience, don't forget, our society still depends on a sound, well-run public schools. So it's just something I thought on my heart this morning is, we got to caution. We're all blessed here this morning, but we don't, probably within walking distance of this church, there's some people that need some assistance. They need some assistance with their troubled youth. They need assistance with being unemployed. Daddy may be in the criminal justice system. So I guess we're our brother's keepers, and we should keep that in mind with anything we talk about, even as it relates to affordable health care or education. You may have a good health care system at work, but let's assist folks that don't get in this new program. So.
Wonderful question. I think we split up some of the questions. I think we have more questions than people.
To incentivize people to get involved, they need to think about heaven, okay?
Well,
that might be the incentivization. We all gonna be judged one day.
That's right.
And if that don't incentivize you to be right, I don't know about a tax break to make a difference.
Well, look, I'm always looking for a tax break, right? The greater he does it. But one of the things that and this question applies to the same school thing, and generally to speak to some of those things. One of the deacons here, we've tried, and there's actually a couple here, even before all this happened, is to have a mentorship program in the school. We went to the Canyon, we're very proactive. We're trying to do it, but a lot of times there is the situation that they don't have any accountability to the program too. It's one thing if I want to come help you, but it's another thing how you receive and put the help in place. And so those things are where, you know, we need to work it out. And then, but it has to be a model, because people, you know, sometimes they want to be involved, but they just don't necessarily know how to put the pieces together to do it. And but going back to the school issue, one of the questions here is that our kids have a lack of fear in school. No more spankings in school, and obviously and the fear of reporting to parents. Is there any way to institute spanking back in school? Or whole punishment?
Well, first of all, I got my butt. I had a lot of spanking. And I don't know if I'm the case that it worked, but I didn't do enough. I'll be honest with you, I think it's a practice that's outlived its usefulness. In this day and time, I just think we're much more educated, we have more data, that talking and mentoring works so much better. I'll be honest with you, they did. I actually, from the 5th to the 9th grade, my parents had divorced and I went to a small school north of Waco. 30 kids in my class, it was a rural setting. They did beat us regularly. And the bottom line is, it did not fix the root cause. They're threatening to call my mother would do a lot more good. Or staying in the play period when I was in the 5th grade and was out of my seat, making me skip the play period and write about 1,000 times that I will do this and I won't do that. So, you know, so I don't endorse spanking at this level. I think there's other more grown-up. In other words, it's kind of like my old school discipline discussion. You can always spank somebody. I mean, that's the easiest thing in the world for a teacher to do. Working with them, talking to them, involving mentors, whether it's the church, the parents. It's the same way. You can always suspend a kid. You can always write a kid and call your police officer to deal with him. Teachers and counselors need to be given the tool, the time to mentor them and work with them. So spanking don't fix nothing. That's such a, in fact, quite frankly, from being a victim of spanking, when it's over, it's over. Then you go back to being your own personality and making the noise when you shouldn't be and throwing a razor when you shouldn't. So that don't fix it. So I would say leave it out. And don't be ticketing them. Now let me suggest, I don't want to spank, but I sure as heck don't want to turn to issuing citations where then the mother who is barely holding on her job got to go down to JP court because Johnny used a curse word or something. So we got to get grown-ups to start using grown-up thinking.
I agree.
And that's great. For me, you know, prayer in school worked for me. So they would beat me and then pray over you. So
I'll be praying that they don't hit me too hard.
Also, next question. In order to reduce unemployment, is there any state law, proposed law to restrict background checks to individuals with credit issues or personal finance records that they've messed up? And also, or with the criminal records that are over 17 years old that were obviously not grave felonies or felonies with weapons.
Well, the credit rating, I think it'd be very difficult because we generally have state law established that we have employment at will, meaning we pretty much leave it to the employer to determine who he or she will hire. Getting back to a state regulation, we regularly, Sylvester and I have fought to give people second opportunities. There's over 200 state professions that you have to have a license. Many of them, if you've committed a felony, you can't get licensed. And I have fought, actually had a bill to create a probationary period. For instance, you can be in prison 5, 10 years to be the best barber in prison. You cut everybody's hair. You're released and you can't become a barber in a free world because you've committed a felony. We now have passed laws where they have to give them a 6-month probationary license, and if they do everything right, they get to then get a full license. The problem with that piece of legislation I had to compromise was they started different agencies wanting an exemption, particularly if it was someone with a service that would allow them to go in to install a security system in the house, et cetera, et cetera. So it's got some exemptions, but we have got to deal with criminal justice re-entry and give people who have served their time, want to behave, want to raise their family, be a taxpayer, give them the opportunity to be employed. So that is an ongoing practice and project of mine in Sylvester.
And that's an important, because you have to allow people to be gainfully employed. And people want to work. People want to be able to take care of their families and themselves. And if you create a system where you diminish that capability, then you simply open the door for other problems.
Well, I do want to say one thing to you gentlemen when you go back to the floor, is that once a year we run the Second Chance program that we have over 25 lawyers that give their time and they TSU in the profession, or allow people who have records to come. And they can talk to those guys, and they help them get a lot of some of the records to get clean.
Invite us, we'd like to be here.
Okay, sure. But those things. But generally, those people who might have a stealing violation or something that was minor in their youth, or not according to that.
Low-level drug offender that no longer has a drug issue should be given an opportunity to work. They want to work.
I think it's clarifying how you can get yourself in the process, from legislatively might be something that we can examine and look at some point.
I want to continue to emphasize, we need some help down there. Sylvester and I understand most of the issues, voting rights, providing leadership, but we need a good governor. We need a good lieutenant governor. We need some folks that will allow us to implement our good ideas.
Which goes back to vote.
Right. Elections matter.
Most of this goes back to code.
Going to everything we've talked about.
The team has a question. I have one more question. I want to read that one. It's kind of close. But it just when we're talking about second chances, you might know somebody that has issue with banking. We were talking about, hey, you can't get bank accounts. And so I just didn't want to mention that we got a resident as well that the second chance bank account is one of the major banks that have that program. And that's separated from these gentlemen that are promoting or taking anything as well. But this is from the church side. We want you to have a bank account. Because we want you to be able, you can't do business without a bank account. You start going to check cash and all these other things that affect how you handle your money. And so if you want to, you can talk to those representatives. And they have some door prizes, so you have some tickets. But we're going to do that in the foyer at some point. Ms. Ari, you raise your arm, raise your hand. Yeah, just say hello and then I'll let you know you're up front.
Good morning, afternoon to everyone. I'm here, Ari Johnson, representing Wells Fargo. I've been chairing the Second Chance Banking opportunity with Mr. Montgomery and so many people in our community, and have had the privilege to help those who could not open an account get one. So a lot of people aren't even trying because they think they cannot. And we have what's called the Opportunity Checking Account. And I've also had the privilege of helping a lot of people get their credit restored, get a secured credit card instead of going online, getting one from a company and they take half of the deposit for all these other fees. We will take your $300 and give you a bona fide bank card. You can rent cars without deposits, things of that nature. And it reports to the Bureau within the first 30 days and helps you get back on track to build your credit history. And I have information and we have some giveaways.
Thank you. They got good gifts too, so thank you. And they're right out front, so just after. Gentlemen, immigration. State of Texas.
Oh, thank you.
Oh,
Is this for me?
You never given me one.
Okay.
You got it back.
You put anybody in it.
You got it back.
I'm gonna get my tithe.
Immigration is not a state issue per se. We need a federal program for all 50 states. What we have to guard against is some of our colleagues would do what they call sanctuary cities, which would allow our police department to stop individuals asking them for their citizenship. Now what that does, which I strongly fought against, and Sylvester and the House members have fought against, the Democratic caucus, is our immigrants are living in our community. It's a given. 11 million in the nation, probably several million in Harris County. You can't have them isolated. If they see something happening in our community, we don't want them to not call the police. We do not want them to show the officer when he makes a call that the guy that broke in my neighbor's home is really around the corner in that brush. You can't have a segment of our society afraid to participate in law enforcement, or their kids are in the school. You talk about you want parents to come to school. You can't have undocumented parents afraid to show up at their school activities. We need a rational, fair, equal, some accountability to these families. But ladies and gentlemen, they're human, their kids are in our school, they're our kids' friends, and I will defend their opportunity not to be discriminated against or mistreated simply because they're undocumented. I can remember a time where, not many years ago, businesses, employers were begging them to come here prior to 9/11, when our border security became rightfully a serious issue. The farm workers, the manufacturers, the domestic workers, the cooks, you name it. They were encouraged to be here. And now they're being teased. Let me give you a quick statistic. I was with the superintendent of Cypress Fairbanks about 4 years ago. Immigration was on the front page that day. And I said, David Anthony, of your 80,000 Cypress students, how many of them are undocumented? Very diverse school district. It wasn't many years ago. It was pretty Anglo. Very diverse. Of your 80,000 students, how many of them are Hispanic? He said, John, almost 40,000. Almost half of Cypress Fairbanks is Hispanic. Well, how many of them are undocumented? He said, well, how many do you think? 40,000 Hispanic students, how many do you think are undocumented? Being very uninformed, I guessed about 20,000. I thought maybe 18, 20,000 students would be undocumented. Anybody want to guess? 2,000. He said, John, you asked me the wrong question. You should have asked me how many of their parents are undocumented. And it's probably close to 20,000. Their students are young Americans. They're born here, they're U.S. citizens. Now, all our right-wing nuts, I don't mind calling them that, my colleagues are right-wing nuts, say, send them all back. Okay, you're going to send an entire school district's parents back to Mexico? What are you going to do to the kids that make up most of the enrollment in Cypress Fairbanks? Would not be much different experience in Albany. The fact of it is, you can't wind back the clock. Maybe we needed a different immigration policy 20, 30, 40 years ago. But these are human beings, God-fearing, largely family-oriented individuals, and quite frankly, I think the federal government needs to come up with a very fair policy. I'm working with a family right now, undocumented, domestic worker, 3 sons, youngest is 15. They own their home, husband works, they're God-fearing. She made a left turn during a construction site off of Katy Freeway. Didn't have her driver's license because we won't give a driver's license if you're undocumented. She spent 6 weeks, Sylvester, in the ICE facility over by Intercontinental Airport. 6 weeks away from her family, and we have barely been able to keep her from being deported. Now, I'm not defending the cartel, troublemakers, criminals. You don't follow our laws, you ought to be sent home. But if you're a God-fearing, church-going mother of 3, man, my God won't let me send her back to Mexico and leave her kids here. So I feel strongly about that issue. But ultimately, Washington's got to solve it, because you can't have a different immigration policy for Arizona and then a different one for Texas. We really don't deal with it in Austin, with the exception, some of our colleagues would have an enforcement policy, which quite frankly would probably run against the United States laws.
Thank you. In the interest of time, we just have a couple more questions. I'm going to try to go through some quick ones. No, you don't, but that's okay. I think these might be a little shorter. Why doesn't, and maybe this is one for you, Representative Turner, but why doesn't Metro service all of Harris County? And when will train service begin from Houston to Dallas?
Well, if he fixes that train from here to Dallas.
Let me take the last one first. I mean, you know, we've had conversations about trying to establish a fast-speed train from Dallas to San Antonio, Houston.
Dallas and from Houston down to the triangle.
Right. So we're having those conversations. A lot of those, you know, that pertains to dollars, and, you know, where the dollars are coming from. And, you know, when there are a lot of people who don't want to spend money.
And property rights.
And property rights.
We have to get the farmers and ranchers pretty near Dallas to give us the right of way.
Right. So there are a lot of issues that are in that. If you recall, just when we started talking about trains from the very beginning, there was a lot of battle on property rights, land rights and stuff. So those conversations will take place. In terms of the metro area, the question is who's in the metro service area. So I don't know, I guess all of Harris County is not in the metro service area. So I gotta take a look at that. Gotta take a look at that. But you know, Metro is now spending a lot of its money into the development of its train system, and even looking at cutting back on some of this bus services, which I'm taking a look at that. But a lot depends on whether or not you're in the metro service area.
Okay, thank you. This question is about someone who's been redistricted. I guess the residence has been redistricted into Precinct 4, or Precinct 1 from Precinct 4. They have Precinct 1 maintenance, but they still have Precinct 4 for constable service. And they're wanting to know, will they have a Precinct 1 constable service in the future? Would you be able to?
We're going to have to yield to try to find that out earlier, because that would be a county commissioner to call. I mean, I just...
Because I think this church is in Precinct 4.
We're one.
Y'all in 1? Is that how Franklin?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we're going to have to defer to the county on that.
Yeah, I really would.
Yeah.
First, the lines are so new that I'm not familiar with them. And number 3, those decisions are made by our commissioners.
Okay. And then the last question is, in an effort to reduce wasteful spending, are there any plans to drug test individuals seeking and reapplying for public assistance?
Well, see, I'm opposed to that because I don't mind the testing if you want public assistance, if we got a plan to help the person that tests positive for drugs or alcohol. The mean-spirited proposal in Austin was, if you test positive, you can't get public assistance. And who does that punish? The children that are dependent. I don't care whether you talk about food stamps or AFDC. If they'll have a program, if someone's detected, we have a valid program of giving them treatment while you continue to assist the children. Actually, a compromise was cut where if they deny that person's benefits, a relative or mentor or another relative could continue to receive the assistance. But the mean-spirited, in my judgment, drug and alcohol is bad. But number 2, there is a fix. It's called counseling, treatment, a program. But just to say we're going to cut you off because you have a drinking and alcohol problem, they're just punishing the family, and I'm not into punishing the family. Unemployment compensation is another valid discussion about, there's nothing wrong with being tough with your policies, but you got to be smart. And if you're not smart by helping someone fix the problem that you're kind of angry about, we're not making it. You got to decide in all these programs, certainly criminal justice, who you're afraid of, and the people we're afraid of, we know what to do. You lock them up and secure. The people that you're mad at, we're mad at drug and alcohol users, but we don't want to give up on them. So cutting them off from benefit, just like a parolee, you got me thinking. A parolee, we make it almost impossible for a parolee to make it. We restrict his assistance program, we restrict where he can work, where he can live. All we're doing is, one, being mean, but number 2, we're not even helping ourselves. We want that person that you want to deny the assistance to be a solid tax-paying parent, one of our neighbors. So to make a I can give you a short answer. No, I don't believe in the mindset. And if we want to cut back on some spending, I'll tell you a few areas we can cut back. We spend thousands and millions of dollars to help the West Texas farmers control their brush. Sylvester and I sit on finance. We do a good job of getting resources back to Houston and Harris County. But we got to deal with the country guys, and they would, instead of doing a mental health program for our Harris County jail to get people the help they need, they'll spend millions of dollars with brush control around Lubbock. Let the farmers clear their own brush as far as I'm concerned. So anyway, there's areas of waste that we could control.
I'm in agreement with that, Can I think up with that last one?
Yeah, we're actually even here to go celebrate Beulah Shepherd, longtime civic leader in Acres Home. We're dedicating the Acres Home Library. For years and years, I always said, why do you call it the Acres Home Library? Let's put somebody's name on it. So we're putting Beulah Shepherd's name on it today. So it's a great honor to a mentor of all. And thank y'all. We'll return anytime.
Thank you.
I didn't get no
Like Channel 13.
that. But thank you again. Thank you to CAM, Community Awareness Ministry. We thank you guys for coming out. We thank Representative Turner. We thank Senator Whitmire for their time. Y'all guys are welcome back anytime. We believe in honest talk about the talk. We're going to pray out, and then we're going to stay. We're going to do the raffle, but I just want to pray out in case some of you have to leave. So let us vow. Gracious Father, we thank you for this afternoon. We thank you for the information that we received. We pray that we are good stewards of that information, that we're able to give the information to others so that they can grow and understand the way that the laws and principles are being applied from Austin, which affects each and every one of us here in our daily lives. We pray that the schools, for our parents and their involvement in the schools and raising up their children, Father, so we can have a good society that we all can flourish with, Father. We pray for the ones with records, that they get jobs and they'll be able to take care of their families. So we thank you for these men, for protective hedges around them, Father. Give them the power through the Holy Ghost to be able to do their representation well and be able to speak where others will understand and turn and fully get a good picture of all the constituents that they serve, Father. Just thank you again for this house, for Fallbrook, for our pastor. Continue to bless us and allow us to have these wonderful opportunities to educate. In the mighty name of Jesus we pray. Amen. Amen.